"You're marrying a security guard," my mother scoffed, loud enough for everyone at dinner to hear, after everything we gave you 6 weeks later. 68 invitations had gone out. Not one came back with a yes. On my wedding day, my parents, my brother, my sister, and every relative they had influenced stayed home. I stood at the aisle with no father beside me and walked toward Noah alone. I thought that was the punishment they wanted me to remember forever. Then, the next morning, my phone exploded. A guest had posted 10 seconds of my wedding, and someone in the comments recognized my groom. I grew up in a family that looked perfect in photographs. My mother, Linda, sold luxury homes and could walk into a room full of strangers like she already knew who mattered. My father, Robert, worked in finance and measured almost everything in terms of discipline, choices, and results. My older brother, Jason, followed the same path. My younger sister, Ashley, built a polished career of her own. And then there was me. I was 34, a marketing director with a master's degree, the daughter who had always checked the right boxes. Good grades, good job, good apartment. At Thanksgiving, Mom would refill someone's wine and casually mention my latest promotion. Dad kept my graduation picture on the bookshelf beside his favorite family photo. For years, I mistook that pride for something unconditional. Noah Walker never cared about any of it. He was 37 and worked as a security guard. He wore a Navy uniform, carried a radio, and somehow remembered the name of every person who crossed his path. The first time I saw what made him different. An older janitor dropped a box of supplies in the lobby. People stepped around him. Noah knelt, helped gather everything, then stayed long enough to make sure the man's wrist was okay. He didn't look around to see who noticed. That was Noah. The first dinner with my parents should have warned me. Mom had set the table with her good dishes, lemon chicken, roasted vegetables, the expensive candles she only lit when she wanted the evening to feel important. At first, everything was polite. Then she asked Noah what he did. "Security," he said. Mom paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. "You're a security guard." There was a tiny laugh behind the words. Dad looked down at his plate. Noah simply nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Mom leaned back. "Muse has worked very hard to build a certain kind of life." My face burned. Noah's didn't. On the drive home, I kept apologizing until he reached over and squeezed my hand. "You don't have to carry what they choose to think of me," he said. 6 months later, Noah proposed. I said yes before he finished asking. What I didn't know was that my mother had already decided she wasn't going to argue with me anymore. She was going to make sure I felt the cost of choosing him. At first, nothing looked organized. That was what made it so easy to dismiss. An aunt told me she had already booked a trip. A cousin said her son had a tournament that weekend. One uncle blamed work. Another relative sent a polite message about bad timing. I kept telling myself it was normal. People were busy. Life happened. Then the numbers started bothering me. Noah and I had sent 68 invitations to my side of the family every few days. Another response came in. "No, can't make it." "So sorry. Maybe next time." Rachel, my closest friend, was sitting at my kitchen counter one evening while I refreshed the RSVP list again. "How many yeses from your family?" she asked. I hesitated. "None yet." She looked at me. "Muse. It's still early. It's 3 weeks away." I closed the laptop harder than I meant to. Noah noticed too, but he never pushed me. That almost made it worse. Meanwhile, Mom became strangely calm. She stopped criticizing Noah directly. Instead, she started asking questions. "Are you sure he's ambitious enough for you? What happens in 10 years when you want more? Do you really see yourself being happy with this life?" Dad was softer, but somehow more painful. One night he told me, "Your mother and I sacrificed a lot so you could have choices." I knew exactly what he meant. Noah wasn't one of the choices they approved of. 2 weeks before the wedding, I checked the list again, and 68 family invitations. 0 yeses. My stomach dropped. That night, my grandmother Margaret called. Her voice sounded thin. "Muse. Sweetheart. I'm sorry." For what silence? Then I heard the faint clink of something on her table. "You don't know. Do you... I stopped breathing. Know what she finally told me? My mother had been calling relatives for weeks. So had my father. They had told everyone that coming to the wedding would only encourage me to make a mistake. They believed that if enough people stayed away, I might finally understand what I was giving up. I sat down on the kitchen floor. The refrigerator hummed behind me. My hands had gone cold. This wasn't scheduling. This wasn't bad luck. It was punishment. I called Mom immediately. She didn't deny it. "I'm trying to make you think," she said. "You convinced my family not to come." "They made their own decisions, after you told them what decision to make." Her voice hardened. "Choices have consequences." Muse. I looked across the room at Noah. He had heard everything for one terrible second. I wondered if my parents had finally broken me. Then Noah sat beside me. "If you want to postpone." "We postpone," he said. "If you want 5 people there. We marry in front of 5 people, but you choose, not them." 3 days before the wedding, Dad called with one final warning. "If I married Noah," he said. I had to accept that the family would not support it. I told him I understood, and for the first time, I actually did. They had made their choice. Now I was about to make mine. The morning of my wedding was painfully beautiful. Sunlight spilled across the hotel room. Rachel stood behind me, fastening the last button on my dress while soft music played from someone's phone. My bouquet smelled like fresh roses and eucalyptus. Everything looked exactly the way I had imagined, except my family was missing. I checked my phone anyway. No message from Mom, nothing from Dad, nothing from Jason, nothing from Ashley. Rachel gently took the phone from my hand. "Don't do this to yourself." I wanted to tell her I wasn't, but I was. At the garden, white chairs curved around a narrow aisle covered in flower petals. Noah's friends, co-workers, neighbors, and several people from his side were already seated. Then I saw the section reserved for my family, empty. Every chair, for a moment. The entire garden seemed to go silent. The coordinator touched my arm. "We're ready whenever you are." I looked toward the entrance behind me. I knew it was ridiculous. Dad had already told me he wasn't coming. Still, some small part of me believed I might hear footsteps, that he might appear in his suit, angry and embarrassed and late. But there. The music started. No footsteps came. My throat tightened. "Just give me a second." Rachel squeezed my hand. I stared at those empty chairs and suddenly remembered every school concert, every graduation dinner, every Thanksgiving picture where we had stood shoulder to shoulder pretending nothing could separate us. Then I understood what hurt so much. They weren't absent because something had happened. Their absence was the message. I lifted my chin. "I'm ready." I walked down the aisle completely alone. I could hear my heels against the stone path. I felt the hem of my dress brushing my ankles. I smelled the flowers, heard someone quietly sniffle, and forced myself not to look at the empty seats again. Then I looked at Noah. His eyes were wet. He wasn't watching my family's section, he was watching me. And somehow, that kept me moving. Near the second row, Rachel lifted her phone for a few seconds. I barely noticed. At the reception, Noah made me laugh. Friends filled the dance floor. Someone brought me cake when I forgot to eat. For a few hours, I almost stopped thinking about who had chosen not to come. Almost. That night, at the hotel, I turned off my phone before climbing into bed. I didn't want another excuse. I didn't want another apology. I didn't want to see my family's names. The next morning, I switched it back on. The screen lit up. Then again. And again. Messages stacked faster than I could read them. Rachel was calling. When I answered, she didn't even say hello. Muse. "The video." "What video?" There was a pause. "The 10 seconds I posted last night." I opened the link she sent me, and before I could finish watching it, I saw the first comment that made my stomach drop. Someone knew exactly who Noah was. The comment was only 4 words. "That's Noah Walker." I read it twice. Then another appeared. I know him too. A third followed before I could scroll. "He stayed with my dad for 3 hours after he collapsed in a lobby. Wouldn't leave until my sister got there." I looked at Noah. He was standing by the hotel window, still half-dressed from breakfast, watching my face change. "What is it?" I handed him the phone. The 10-second clip was simple: me walking alone. The empty family section, Noah waiting at the end of the aisle. Rachel's caption read, "Her groom is the security guard her family refused to accept." That should have been the whole story. It wasn't. The view count climbed every time I refreshed. Comments kept coming. A younger man wrote that Noah had trained him when he was new, scared, and one mistake away from losing his job. An older woman said Noah had stayed with her during a building emergency, found her a safe place to sit, and called her daughter because her hands were shaking too badly to use her phone. A former co-worker wrote, "He treats the cleaning crew the same way he treats executives. That tells you everything. Nobody needed to call my family names. The contrast did all the work." I turned to Noah. "You never told me any of this." He looked uncomfortable. "They needed help. That's it." He shrugged. What else was I supposed to do by noon? The video had spread far beyond Rachel's page. A local news outlet picked up the story after several people independently confirmed who Noah was. His workplace released a short statement calling him dependable, respected, and trusted in emergencies. Then my mother called. For 1 second, I thought she was finally going to ask if I was okay. Instead, she said, "You need to post something." I went still. Post what? "A clarification. Tell people this was a private family misunderstanding." I stared at the wall. Was it silence? Muse. "People are calling us. Clients have seen it. Your father's friends have seen it. This is getting out of hand." No. It got out of hand when you convinced my family to boycott my wedding. We were trying to protect you. Then why are you calling about your reputation instead of your daughter? She had no answer. My voice came out quieter than I expected. "I'm not going to rewrite what happened so you feel better about it." I ended the call. 3 days later, Mom and Dad came to our apartment. Dad looked older somehow. Mom kept both hands wrapped around her purse. "We were wrong," Dad said. Mom looked at Noah, then at me. "We thought we were protecting you." From what her jaw tightened. I waited. Finally, she said it. From settling. The room went completely still. I looked at Noah. This man had spent years helping people who could offer him nothing in return, and my parents had reduced him to a uniform. Noah spoke once. "A job tells you how someone earns a living. It doesn't tell you who they are." Mom looked down. Dad rubbed his palms together. "We didn't know him," he admitted. "No," I said. "You never tried to." He swallowed. "We're sorry. We want to fix this." I felt something in me settle, not anger, clarity. "You don't get to fix this by making it disappear." Mom's eyes lifted. "I never named you online. I never asked anyone to attack you, and I won't. But I'm also not going to protect you from the truth." Dad nodded slowly. Mom looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Then I told them the part they hadn't expected. Sorry can be a beginning. I paused, but it is not a reset button. For the first time in my life, my parents had no answer. And for the first time, I didn't need one. The calls started the next morning. Some relatives apologized immediately. Others took longer. Jason was one of the first. "I should have called you myself," he said. "Yes, I should have come." Yes. There was a pause. "I'm sorry, I believed he meant it. That didn't mean everything was fixed. I appreciate the apology." I told him. "But I'm going to need time. For once." He didn't argue. Ashley was different. She asked me to meet her at the little diner Noah and I used to visit after difficult family dinners. When I walked in, she was already sitting in a booth by the window, twisting the paper wrapper around a straw. She looked exhausted. "I got dressed that morning," she said before I had even ordered coffee. I stopped. "For the wedding." She nodded. "I did my hair. I put on the blue dress you liked. I even drove halfway there." My chest tightened. "What happened?" She stared at the table. Dad called. That was all she needed to say. Ashley wiped beneath one eye. I turned around. I wanted to be angry. Part of me was, but what I saw across that table wasn't cruelty. It was shame. "I was scared of disappointing them," she whispered, "and you chose to disappoint me instead." She flinched. I know, I didn't hug her. Not that day. But she didn't make excuses either. That mattered. Over the next several months, I learned something I wish I had understood earlier. An apology tells you what someone feels in one moment. Change tells you who they are afterward. Some relatives called Noah themselves. They listened. They apologized without explaining why they had no choice. A few started inviting us to ordinary things again: Sunday dinners, birthdays, backyard cookouts. Others sent one guilty message and disappeared when I didn't immediately tell them everything was fine. I let them go. Mom and Dad had the hardest adjustment. There was no dramatic punishment. They didn't lose their jobs. Nobody ruined their lives. They simply lost something they had always assumed belonged to them: unlimited access to mine. I stopped answering every call. I stopped changing plans because Mom expected me to. And when Dad tried to talk about putting this behind us,